All right, going to get started here with the Premiere tutorial. This is Kyle from the Joliet Library. Happy to be here today. So this is our Premiere screen. This is an empty timeline. When you open up Premiere, it should look something like this. I've got it on the editing screen right here. You can see my my mouse, I think. Like there's color screen, effects. I like to just start with the editing screen. So let's have it go back. I'm going to just drag this folder in from my desktop here. So here is where all the clips we'll be playing with today are. We can double click on them and they'll show up in this preview screen. Got some sand, the beach, some seagulls, because it's almost spring but not quite, so let's imagine we're at a nicer place than Illinois in mid-March. So you can, watch through the clips here just by hitting the space bar. These clips are all from Pixabay, just some free stock footage. Get a nice shot of the water here. Double click on this. You can preview it here, but it's not actually in our project yet. So if we wanted to start with this clip of the sand going through this person's hand, we can just click and hold and drag and drop it over here, and this is the timeline. So you've got your preview screen, you've got your bin with all your clips. This is our actual project here. And I can drag this down so we can see it better. This is like the project that we're actually putting together right here. This is our screen for that, and then this is our timeline. It's split into two clips. This top part on V1 is our video clip, and then on A1 down here is the audio. I don't believe this clip even has any audio, and we're not really going to worry about audio today. So I can press the space bar, and we can see it. Kind of a cool clip of the sand. So when we're ready to bring in our next clip, I'm just going to drag up here. I can click on this one of the surfer, click, hold, and drag, drop it in. So now it'll play from this first clip straight into the second clip with no transition, nothing to go from one to the next. It'll just go straight into the next one. So we're gonna watch that. It looks like this clip is in a different aspect ratio. So we can go to our effects controls right here. We can adjust that by changing the scale. So right here is the scale under effect controls when you've got the clip selected. So if I click on this clip, these are the effect controls for the sand clip. If I click on the surfer clip here, these are the effect controls for that. So you can move the position up and down by adjusting these numbers here. This is the y-axis, this is the x-axis. And then we can just drag it out so it fills up the frame. So when you drag a new clip into your timeline, it usually asks you, and it will just automatically format the project to that first clip that you dragged in. So we're just formatting everything to the to this clip here. Oh, I gotta drag it out a little bit more. Drag it back down. So now we can watch how they go into each other. So let's say that I like the length of this clip, but this clip is a little too long for me. There's a few ways that we can shorten it. So if this, say we want it to go, I'm going to zoom in here just by clicking on this little circle here and dragging it out. Say I want it to go this clip here of the surfer walking through the water. If I want it to go from here and I want it to stop there, and I'm just grabbing and changing my playhead by pulling it back and forth on the timeline. There's two ways. Well, I'm sure there's multiple ways, but here's two ways that I'll teach you to shorten the clip to that length. The first one, we can just hover over the end of the clip And see how our cursor turns into this red arrow? We can just click and hold and drag it back. And now the clip has shortened to only a few seconds. And now it stops because that's the end of the timeline. So let me just Control-Z, undo what I just did. Another way to do it is we can go over here to the razor tool. Now you can either just click on the razor tool there, or you can just hit C on your keyboard to change to the razor tool. And we can just line it up with our playhead here, this blue line. Click. Click back on the selection tool or hit V. And then we can just click on the... So what we've done is we've split the clip into two. So we can click on the one that we don't want and just hit delete on the keyboard. So that's two ways to shorten your clip or just adjust, cut out the dead space that you don't want. So we can drag another clip in here. We got one of some seagulls staying on the beach theme. So this clip's a lot longer. And we can play with the scale, make sure everything's lined up good there. I think it's probably the same aspect ratio. So let's say we don't want this to just go straight from the surfer into the seagulls. We want to add a transition. What a transition is, it's just a creative way to go from one clip to another, and Premiere Pro has some built in. So the way I'm going to find the transitions is I'm going to click on these two arrows right here. Go ahead and click on those, and it's going to bring this menu down. I guess it's not capturing the menu, so you know what? Let me just go up to the effects panel up here. And we can go to video transitions right here. And there's different categories: 3D motion, dissolve, immersive video, sorry, iris, page peel, slide, wipe, zoom. All of these do different things. So let's try a zoom transition. I'm just going to click down on the drop arrow, grab onto cross zoom, click hold, and drag it in between the two clips. Ooh, let me see. I need to shave a little bit of this one off because you need some space for the transition to take effect. So I'm just going to shave off the beginning, pull it back to where it needs to be. I'm going to drag this cross zoom right in the middle so you can drop it different places. I like to drop them right in the middle like that, right in the middle between the two clips. And then I'm going to press enter because when this section of the timeline is red, that means you should render your clip, or at least I like to. So I'm just going to hit enter. It'll render the clip real fast, and then it'll start playing from the beginning. So we can just watch what we've got here so far. It's going to go to the next clip without a transition, and now watch how it goes into the next clip with a zoom. Now that looks pretty cheesy to me. I think I'd rather use a different transition. Let's just try a simple dissolve. Can't go wrong with a good dissolve. Cross dissolve is a good one. Let's drag that there, and let's see how that goes. I think I liked that better. Just let that play out for a while. I'm going to go ahead and hit C to bring up my cutting tool. Click on the clip where the playhead is, then delete the rest of it, because we don't need 20 minutes of watching seagulls here. Let's see what our last clip is here. We've got some more clips of, or footage of the water. So I'm just gonna, you can either click and drag from your bin, or you can click and drag right from the preview screen here. And then we can try another transition. Let's see what we got. Let's try a wipe. We can try gradient wipe. Let's see what that does. Oop, let's not do that one. Let's do random wipe. How about that? Because we don't know what we want. So I'm going to press enter. It's going to render that out. Then it's going to start playing from the beginning, but we don't need to watch from the beginning. I'm just going to click over here and go ahead and press play so we can see what this random wipe does as a transition. Looks like a cool little pixel fall from the top. Might not fit the theme, but just an example of different types of transitions you can use. So let's say for this clip, we actually want it to be play at a different speed. We can actually change the length of the clip by adjusting the speed and duration. So what you need to do is right-click, and you can't see the menu, but there's going to be one called speed and duration. I'm going to click on that, and it brings up this box here. So it says clip speed / duration. And we've got a speed at 100%. Obviously, that's the normal speed that it'll play. So we could either make it more than 100%, and that would make it go faster, or we can make it less than 100%, and that'll make it go slower. Let's start with less than 100%, and we'll just type in 50. And we'll go ahead and hit OK. Now you see the clip literally got twice as long because it's playing back at 50% speed. So I'm going to hit enter again to re-render our transition, because every time you change something about the clip, anything that you've rendered will need to be rendered again because it's changed. So let's see how it goes in, and it should be slower. So now it's playing back slower. So let's do the opposite. We can right-click, speed / duration. It's still at 50%. Let's try 200%. Hit OK. Now it's half the length it originally was. So we can hit enter, render that transition. Now it's green. That's what we like. We can watch again. So now it should be faster. This is the way you'd do a time lapse. Say you took footage of the sun going down. You could just play it back faster. I mean, for that, you might have to go to, something like 2,000% speed or 9,000% speed, depending on how long your clip is and how fast you want it to play back. So I'm back on the clip speed and duration. I guess it's actually not showing up on the screen here. But we can also reverse the speed. So there's a button here to reverse. So I'm going to go ahead and click that, and it'll play our clip backwards. So let's go ahead and hit enter to render it. And then let's play it back, and the water will be going in reverse now. Nope. This might need to be rendered to play back smoothly. Let me put it back to 100% speed. So now it's in reverse. The more effects you put on it, the more taxing it is on the computer, so you might need to render the whole clip. If you want to render a whole clip, say your computer's having trouble playing it back, like we can, let me put it to 200% speed again, where it was playing back kind of glitchy. See, it's skipping. We don't like that. So let's say you want to render the whole timeline because your computer is having trouble playing it back. You can go to Sequence and then Render In to Out. And now it'll load. This can take, depending on how long your sequence is, this could take 20 minutes to render out. But if you want to see it back before you finalize everything, it's an important step. And the higher quality footage, the longer it'll take to render. So it's almost done here. Just a few more seconds. Cue the Jeopardy music. We're almost there. There we go. So let's play it back, and now it should be playing back completely smooth. It's in reverse, and it's at 200% speed. And the computer's having no problem playing it back. So, let's talk about color settings. We can go up here to the top for color, and it'll bring down this menu here, the Lumetri color. Don't know if I pronounced that correctly, but that's what it's called. So let's say this clip is too dark. We want to brighten it up a little bit. You've got all your dials right here. Exposure will affect the brightness. So if you bring it up, it'll make it brighter. Bring it down, it'll make it darker. Contrast adjusts the difference between white and black in an image, like your brighter spots and your darker spots. So if I can show you, like if I crank this up all the way, might take a second for the computer to kind of catch up. It's just making a bigger difference between the black areas and the white areas on the screen. You can double click if you don't like what you did. You know, if you pull your contrast all the way up, I don't like that, just double click on this circle and it goes back to normal. And then if you drag it all the way down, things look kind of dull and gray because there's less difference between the white areas and the black areas. Highlights just bring up the light areas. So if I drag this up, all the whites get brighter. If I drag it down, all the whites and like light areas get less bright, darker. Shadows is the opposite. Drag this up, you can bring up all the dark areas. Drag it down, you can darken the dark areas, and it adds contrast on its own. White adjusts the level of white. It's kind of similar to highlights. Black is kind of similar to shadows. And saturation is how much color is on the screen. So if you drag it up, it's gonna, this is what I would consider to be oversaturated. Doesn't look good to me. But if you bring it all the way down, now you've got a black and white image, video. And of course, it's unrendered now because I've been adjusting all these. You can click down on Creative. Faded film is just kind of an effect to make it look like it was shot on film. I don't think it really looks that good, so I never play with that. You've got another you've got another saturation slider right here, which does the same thing. So I guess if you want extra saturation, you can drag that again. Vibrance. Vibrance affects color in a different way than saturation. It kind of affects the colors that aren't as prominent and makes them more prominent. I'm not going in order here, sorry, but sharpness just makes your image sharper. But generally, I don't like to play with it too much because when you increase sharpness, you increase grain. So if you have, especially on a like an underexposed image or like an image that's or video that's dark, if you crank up the sharpness, it's just going to look grainy, and it's not going to look that great. So I think that's enough for color for our purposes here today. Let's we can go over here to the effect controls. Say I wanted to have a clip playing on top of another clip and have them both playing at the same time. What I could do is highlight everything that I've got on the timeline here, click, hold, and drag up. So we've got it on V2 now. So everything on V2 will be on top of V1. We've got nothing on V1 right now, but let's say I drag this sand clip underneath this water clip, and I want them both to be playing over top of each other. What we can adjust is the opacity. So let's see. So I've got my water clip selected here. It's on V2. And since it's on V2, we can only see this because the sand clip is underneath and this is at 100% opacity. You go to your effect controls. Opacity is right here underneath the anti-flicker filter. And you've got your slider right here where it says 100%. You can click and hold and drag it down. And you can adjust how much you can see it. 0%, you can't see it at all. 100%, you can't see the clip under it at all. So let's try 50. And we can play that back. And you can see both clips at the same time. Can be a really cool effect. if you have the right footage. This might, this necessarily isn't the right footage for that, but something to think about, something to play with. There's almost limitless things you can do with this program when you're editing a video. It's one of my favorites. So let's see. Let's go through our effect controls. We've gone over scale and position. Just to remind you, scale is how large the image is on screen. Drag it up, and you will zoom in, but you'll also lose resolution. Zoom out, it won't fill the frame anymore. I'm just going to Control Z there. And you can click this uniform scale. So if you're playing with the scale slider and you don't want the height and width to be affected at the same time, and you don't mind whatever video you've got, video or image, to be stretched, you can click this uniform scale button to be off. So now I can individually scale the width. But as you see, that looks really weird and kind of bad. So it's necessary in certain situations, but I don't really use it. So now I'm individually stretching the height. If you do it slightly, it's not always that noticeable, like if you need to do it, but I don't recommend it. Rotation, it's just rotating the image. This can be helpful for certain types of shots. If your tripod wasn't 100% level, you can always rotate it a little bit, but as you see, since it's a square and it's fitting into the timeline as a square, you're going to have these black areas, because there's nothing behind that. So if you got to add a little bit of rotation, I would also recommend increasing the scale so it fills it out. So yeah, well, let's say we'll do 13, we'll do 5 degrees of rotation. Let's just bring up the scale and adjust it so it still fills the frame, because nothing looks more unprofessional than having parts of your frame with empty space. It's not a good look. Don't do it. Not even once. So let's see what else we've got here. Let's drag this back up. Let's say you wanted to add some text. There's a few ways to do it. This is my favorite way. I like to go to the graphic and titles drop down, click on it, and then new layer, and then text. So now we've added text, and we can adjust this. We can go to the captions and graphics panel, and if you've got it selected, click on edit right here. You can use these buttons to automatically line it up. Let's see. Center it. I just got to drag my viewer over here. So if you hit these two buttons, the vertical center and the horizontal center, it'll land right in the middle. So we can type in whatever we want with our project. We can just call it the beach, since it's a bunch of beach footage. And if you change what's typed in there, sometimes you got to press these buttons again so it's perfectly lined up. And if you want to adjust the text, just double click on it till it's highlighted. We can change the font. We can change the size. But if you change the size and you want it centered, just go ahead and click these axis buttons, the center buttons. You can change, well, if your font has like bold or italicized, you can change that. Appearance down here, you could add a stroke, which is just an outline, basically. If I change the color, you'll be able to see. And this is how you make the stroke bigger. So you can see now. Let me just click off of it. Now it's got a black outline. Let me just double click till it's highlighted again. You can add background, which is just could be a solid color. I don't generally like to do that. You can add a shadow. Shadows are nice. Adjust your distance and everything, get it looking how you want. So now if I click off of it here, you can see there's a shadow, kind of a weird color. Let's make it actually black. I think that looks a little bit better, just for a quick... If I have a shadow, I'd probably remove the stroke. That looks okay. See what else you can do here. Things that I like to add to my text. We can even add transitions to our text. So if you want your text to come on in an interesting way rather than just appear, because now if I play the timeline, it just appears, which you might like that look, you might not. Let's say you want to add a transition. Just the same as before, we'll go to Effects up here. We've got all our transitions still pulled up. Let's do a slide. We'll do a whip. So under slide, whip, drag it on, and drag it on the end. So it'll come in with a whip and it'll come out with a whip. So let's just play it. And then it goes out. So yeah, the same way other clips can be manipulated, text clips can also be manipulated the same way. You can even click on it here and go to your... Oh, let me go back to the editing screen. Go to your effect controls. You can adjust the opacity. Whoops, wrong clip selected. Let me grab this one again. You can adjust your opacity, you know. You can adjust the scale from here, make it bigger, make it smaller. Might as well make it fill out the frame a little bit more. So, we've got our project here, and we want to save it so the world can view it. What I like to do is I like to have everything that I do selected, and I know where the export is going to start and where it's going to end. So you can click down here on your timeline and hit the I button on your keyboard, like the letter I. And this is what we have right here, which is lined up with our playhead, is an in point. And you can scroll it around the same way you can like shave the clips or lengthen them. So it brings up the same kind of menu. Click, hold, drag it right to the beginning where you want your clip to start. And then go somewhere near the end and hit the O button. And now we've created an out point. I for in point, O for out point. Click and drag, hold it out. So now we know when it's time to export. The export is going to start with our in point and end with our out point. Because you don't have to work on the timeline from the beginning of the timeline or towards the end. You can have clips, you know, stored over here that you're cycling through and clips stored over here that you're cycling through. So we're ready to export. So let's go ahead and go to File. And then drag down and there's an export. And then Media. File, Export, Media. It's going to bring up a window. I guess this window is not being captured. Let me see. Okay, now we can see it. So, I just had to change my screen share. So, here, let me start from the top. Let me cancel. I'm going to hit File. Now you can see Export and then Media. So it's going to pop up here. This is your export settings. Very important stuff here. Listen up. These are some of the most important parts because this is how your video is going to end up looking when you post it to YouTube or Facebook or Instagram, wherever it's going. So you've got a bunch of buttons, a bunch of sliders. Don't get discouraged. It's not as complicated as you think. So we'll start at the top. Format. I like to use H.264. And then under format is preset. And let's say we wanted to use YouTube. Look at this. It's got all these YouTube settings. Let's just go ahead and do 1080 full HD. And it's going to kind of fill in the blanks for like the basic 1080 YouTube settings. You've got your output name. Just go ahead and click on the blue because this is what your file is going to be called. So we'll just save it to the desktop here and we'll just call it The Beach. So that's what your file is going to be called. And you want to make sure export video and export audio is checked. They always are. You'd have to accidentally press them to turn those off. So now we go down to our basic video settings here. I always like to click render at maximum depth. I like to click, these are fine for HD here. Like I said, we're using our YouTube 1080 settings, so it kind of fills in the blanks on a lot of this stuff. You can scroll down a little bit more. I personally like to use CBR when it comes to bitrate encoding. Now what CBR does is it makes sure that every frame is basically running at full speed, and it's gonna export the highest quality. A lot of people don't like to do that because they don't like to fill up their computer with bigger files. So if the size of your file is important to you, then I would just run VBR 1 pass or VBR 2 pass. But VBR 2 pass can take a long time because it actually runs over your videos twice. So if you're trying to get the video done fast and you don't want a lot of files, or big files taking up space on your computer, I would just do VBR 1 pass. So we'll just do VBR 1 pass for our purposes here. And then this target bitrate affects how much, like what quality your video is going to be. But as I drag it up, your estimated file size goes up. If you drag it down, your estimated file size goes down, but also the quality of your video. So what I like to do is somewhere around 30, but it will take a little bit longer and it will make a little bit bigger of a file. So you have to weigh out your options there. And then I like to click use maximum render quality. And also, yeah, render at maximum depth. We already went over that. So there's two things you can do next. You can either hit export and it'll just go ahead and export it, but you will not be able to use Premiere Pro anymore while it's exporting. Or you can hit the Q and it'll bring up a program called Media Encoder, and then you can actually still use Premiere Pro while you're exporting your video. So we're not going to be working on any more videos right now, so we're just going to go ahead and hit export. And it'll bring this up, and the estimated time is about a minute, so that's not too bad. It's a very short clip. So that's pretty much the last step for your basics of using Premiere Pro. We covered how to drag our clips in. We covered how to resize them, add some transitions, change the color, change the brightness and everything, add some text, and put our in point and our out point, and then export. So if you guys have any questions, be sure to leave them in the comments. Maybe we can get to that with another tutorial. And also feel free to sign up for our next tutorials. You can pay attention to our website and get all the info on what we're going to do next here at the DMS. Thank you for joining me, and you guys have a great day.
Digital Media Studio.